We are going to talk about Mr. Trump because
we have to talk about the Trumpists. We got to talk about the Trumpists.
He's being thrown off the ballot again, this time in the state of Maine, even though the state of Colorado has already determined that, yeah, that's really not constitutional.
You can't just do that.
And when I hear people say, but he's this and he's that and he's this
then
and he's that.
Then get a charge, get a conviction, and then you might have a leg to stand on.
And even then, you might not. And you know why?
Correct.
Because Eugene Debs ran for president in 1920 from prison. And he's still, and this is 1920, and he's still got, I think, 1.5 million votes.
No, I think that it's like, if people would spend all of their anti-Trump energy doing something productive.
They can't. It's too
I really feel like we could change the world. I've never seen the amount of effort, energy, and like vigor that people put into hating Trump that I have never seen any of those people put into anything else in their lives. And I know so many people like that. Like, it's so interesting to me. It's like, if you put that, even a tenth of that passion into something productive or charitable, we'd be better off.
But this is what we talk about when we say that and again, it's not liberal media, it's corporate liberal media.
Yeah, it's not that it's liberal.
Very important that we distinguish.
It's all capital.
Correct.
It doesn't matter. It's all the same. All roads lead to the same plutocrats.
When the Boston Globe, which is, the poor man's version of the New York Times or the Washington Post, sorry, I got to dig Boston a little bit. In defense of Maine Secretary of State Sheena Bellows' courageous decision to keep Trump off the ballot. Keep in mind, Massachusetts is a state that has decided that they are not conducting a Democratic primary either, like Florida. They're just awarding Massachusetts.
Oh.
Yeah, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has decided that there is no primary process. We're just choosing who we want. And yet this somehow is democracy. Bellows defended her decision in the face of predictable threats that came after Donald Trump posted her biographical data.
He is such a ridiculous buffoon.
He is.
Like,
she's really terrible. You should totally find her.
It irritates me to no end that we have to sit here and be like defending that buffoon in reference to existence of democracy. Mm-hmm. Like, this is the most, I'm actually sitting here thinking they're wrong for keeping the buffoon off the bat. Like, this is just not the world I thought it would be.
On December 28th, Maine became the second state in the nation to order Donald Trump removed from its presidential primary ballot. Yeah, they really have that habit. Following the December 19th ruling from the Colorado Supreme Court, keep in mind this has now been overturned in Colorado, Maine Secretary of State Sheena Bellows issued a 34-page decision that concluded the U.S. Constitution does not tolerate an assault on the foundations of our government, and Maine law requires me to act in response. Bellows' decision enacted in word and deed the too rarely remembered reality that the fair interpretation and faithful application of statutory as well as constitutional law is entrusted no less to executives than to judges, and that the U.S. system for electing presidents expressly empowers state legislatures to decide how each state's election is to be made. And she deliberately refused to abdicate her responsibility to make a call, a responsibility that her state legislature specifically delegated to her. I don't know about you, but if you're looking around at the state of this country right now, what you're doing is trying to drive as deep a wedge between the American people as you can possibly drive.
Well, they're sending people over to Trump.
Correct.
Because you're making him the martyr completely. I mean, but I thought that the first time around with all the news and all this stuff, like, in 16, it was like that. In 16, it was like, he got so much free advertising. I mean, you people just do not get it. You just don't get it. But I mean, and the truth is, does anybody care about Maine anyway?
Well, it's not even that Maine. Well, you see, the thing is,
I agree with Michael. And that's what I've said. These are private clubs in each state. They could do whatever the hell they want. And the fact that people who are club members get disappointed by that, your option is get out of the club. But that's just the way it is. But as far as the state secretary of state removing somebody from a ballot, that's a whole different issue. That's a different issue to me. That's not a private club. That's a secretary of state. That means that literally that state's tax dollars are paying for that person to tell you who can and cannot be on your ballot. That's unacceptable.
I do not reach this conclusion lightly. Democracy is sacred. I am mindful that
Clearly
no Secretary of State has ever deprived a presidential candidate of ballot access based on Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. I am also mindful, however, that no presidential candidate has ever before engaged in insurrection. Again, you are making a decision that is supposed to be made at the federal level, not the state level. And by doing that, you are perpetuating this divide that this country can no longer stand on.
Okay, so to any of my legal people out there, like I'm sitting
Let the
here
lawyer talk.
as a legal person, like, and I get very in the minutia of the language of it. So anybody out there, if you don't see the irony of this, so she's kicking him off the ballot under the guise of the 14th Amendment. Okay. The 14th Amendment is the basis of what we call due process. In the same sentence that she's kicking him off of the ballot for violating the 14th Amendment, she's doing so without he never had due process. So his entire 14th Amendment rights have been violated in this. See, here's the thing, all right? The rights are our rights. They're individual rights that protect us from the government. Okay, she is doing something based on something where he wasn't given due process. She is in violation of Donald Trump's 14th Amendment rights. And yet that is what she is citing to keep him off the ballot. So that's sort of my little legal lingo for today. Do you see what, like, how ridiculous that is? And she's stating that he engaged in an insurrection when he has not been convicted or charged with doing so.
Bellows minces no words on the question of whether Trump engaged in insurrection or rebellion. The record establishes that Mr. Trump, over the course of several months and culminating on January 6, 2021, used a false narrative of election fraud to inflame his supporters and direct them to the Capitol to prevent certification of the 2020 election and the peaceful transfer of power. Okay.
So now what we're saying is that the Secretary of State can supersede the entire judicial branch and declare somebody guilty of a crime without them being tried. That's what that is. Because if she, and it's so ironic because, again, that's a violation of the 14th Amendment. So anyway, you all,
the problem that we have
that's where
that
I'm lucky,
no one really wants to address here, and all too often we become very tribal in our political discourse, and that's a huge problem. I am not going to do that because the truth of the matter is our election system, for the most part, is rigged. It's rigged in many different ways. You want to say that big tech had favorability towards Joe Biden over Donald Trump? I think mostly anybody would give that agreement, would say that that's a fair assessment.
Wait, that who?
That big tech.
Oh.
That the major social media conglomerate machine that we have in this country favored Joe Biden.
Oh, yeah,
Donald
for sure.
Trump in the
Yeah,
election.
of course.
If you want to say that that's election meddling, you could. You also can reference the 2016 election and all that proceeded over the next 4 years, where the Democratic Party tried to move heaven and earth to get the Electoral College voters to switch their vote from Trump to Hillary Clinton. Then they proceeded to say that the Russians won the election for Donald Trump, and they stayed on that for 4 years. For 4 years. Basically just assuming that everyone would be okay with you saying that he is an illegitimate president and is, in fact, committing treason. That we don't actually have an actual commander-in-chief, that this person was installed by a foreign nation, and they never let up on this shit, no matter how many various debunking circumstances, including what happened with Mr. Mueller. And even then they wouldn't stop.
No.
And they're still doing it.
Right. But
so
it's ridiculous.
My attitude has always been, when it comes to the Democrats and Republicans, when it comes to getting in the mud of the worst of the political discourse, you will never beat the Republicans at this game. They will always beat you.
And actually, mark my words, in whatever lawsuit is filed in Maine, it will be based on a violation of his 14th Amendment rights. So that's just I just think that that's just very ironic.
And all the while you have spent all of this time, all of this money, all of these resources, whether it was defending Hunter Biden, whether it was never acknowledging the fact that the one thing you could have went after Trump on that would have sealed his fate was his violation of the Emoluments Clause, because every one of you scum do it too.
Right, that's why they couldn't do it that way.
Go after him on something that actually had tangibility, but you just completely are like, oh no, he paid off a porn star. Oh, he was messing around with classified documents. It's like,
they just can't. But you know what? Every time they do it, all it does is you keep proving him right that you're chasing him and witch hunting him. Like, all it does is prove him right.
The perception to the general population is that I don't like Trump, but I'm going to support him if it means it's going to stick it to you guys.
Yes. That's how sanctimonious and annoying they seem when they do this stuff.
But they know it and they don't care, because when you live in the
he's going to get back on the ballot.
Yeah, he's already back on the ballot in Colorado.
He's going to get back on that. You can't do that. Attention, Secretary of State. Clearly not a legal background, okay? You can't just do that. And yes, I mean, obviously you can, but you won't be able to withstand any judicial scrutiny for that. Yeah. So I don't, he'll get back on the ballot, and all you're doing is making him look like the victim. Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.